If we see the next, la siguiente lámina, por favor. Here we can see it. The birth of modern thought from the 16th, maybe 15th century to the 18th century. Then the growth from 1790 to the beginning of 20th century. Then the establishment in the 20th century. And at last, the decline that it's in the end of the 20th century. This decline is the most interesting part, and I'm sure that you're going to feel much more interested in this part, but that's the part that Clark is going to talk a little bit about in a couple of minutes. So, okay, let's see my two last láminas, please. Okay. The decline of the modern, okay, if the modern concept can come with some confusion, the postmodern concept comes with more confusion. It's not clear most of the time what we mean by postmodern. And some years ago, I wrote an article where I tried to explain that part of the confusion, I think, is that most of the things we call postmodern are really different things. Sometimes when we talk about postmodernity, we're talking about how modernity is disappearing. It's dying, okay? And that is a way of thinking on postmodernity. But sometimes postmodernity also means going back before modernity. There are some movements today that are movements going to the past and that are postmodern movements, very conservadores. How do you say conservadores? Conservative movements that are also part of our postmodernity. Beg your pardon? Fundamentalism could be before modernity. But also postmodernity means like trying to, to jump over modernity. Modernity is over, so let's just jump and create something different. And postmodernism, a lot of times, also means let's reinvent modernity, like Habermas. Let's try again. Let's make modernity didn't get what it promised, didn't get us what it promised, but we didn't understand it quite well. So let's try again. Let's be modern in a better way. And that's a way also of being postmodern. Okay? So, modern thought in 15 minutes. Any question? I think you are afraid of the microphone, right?
Well, Enrique, I'll say one thing. We have two visiting international scholars here from China, and it occurred to me that the beginning of modern art and the beginning of modern science and so on might be a little bit different from the Chinese perspective. I'll just make that observation, and then we'll go on.
China jumped late in modern times, very recently. So yes, I agree with you.
Actually, when Enrique mentioned the idea of reinventing modernity, ideas of harmony and a separation a separation from reality in terms of escape, like we talked about, that would be, I don't know, a very positive element to modernity, a reinvention of modernity. Anybody else?
Okay, so let's continue with the good part, the interesting part.
Right. I'm going to be taking what Enrique said and putting it into the 21st century, talking about specifics, the 20th century, excuse me, talking about specific examples, and I'm going to be asking you to contribute to this because we will be moving into territory that you're much more familiar with than I am, video games, things like that, and virtual technology, and then what comes next. So I'll be calling on you, and I'll let you know. La siguiente, por favor. All right. One of the things you might want to consider is how you're going to approach the information that we read, the lectures that we give you. You could choose the path of communications, creativity, film, artistic production, however you want. You might want to qualify whatever you do. If you produce something for us, an activity or an argument, you might want to say you are arguing from a certain perspective. And that might help you focus on something. Okay? Today we're going to be talking about the illusions of experience. The ideas and the experience that Enrique was talking about from the 1500s, these things can be understood as invisible. They were created. They're social constructions in some ways. They're also based on history. But they were in large part created by us. Therefore, we can call them an illusion. Now, and that's an example of one of the things where you can say, Clark, you're totally wrong. There's nothing illusory about the telescope. You follow? This is where I'm open to attack. Okay? All right. Siguiente, por favor. Okay. The three ideas on the left side of your screen, illusions, movements, and the mirror. Society in the 20th century is very easily understood as a rationalized society where experience has been rationalized. I use the word experience because reality, in our day, is kind of a problematic term. So I'm just going to use experience. We will be talking about the values of the spectacle. I asked you to give a cursory glance of that reading by Debord. And then distances from reality. We'll be discussing just how difficult it is to reach reality. It's kind of like the game you played in 7th grade math where they say, okay, walk halfway to the door, and then walk halfway to the door, and then you never quite reach the door, in theory. So reality can be understood that way. You can't really touch it. You can't really get there. You might understand what I'm saying, but we're not totally communicating. And next, reproduced experiences, mainly with the film, the quintessential 20th century art form, the film, the cinema. And Enrique mentioned the value of motion. It's very important. People moving from the farm to the cities, people moving into a collective, becoming part of something where you are X person, but you then become part of X group. And then next, experience, the reproduction of experience with the film. And finally, I want you to consider the differences between participation and reception. Now, let me hear some feedback right now. What can you say just to start the ball rolling? What's the difference between participation and reception, or active? Well, please, somebody from Mexico, North Carolina. What do you got? Yes, Carla.
Okay. Well, the difference remains. It's about you being passive or active. If you participate, you're being active with society. If you are just receptive, you are just receiving experience of other representations of reality. For example, like film or photography. You're just there watching another reality that is not yours.
Okay, good. Anybody else? You might want to consider an artist or someone who is producing. Are they really being proactive when they are producing, or are they just reproducing? And we'll get more into that later. Please go back to the slide. Well, anyways, yeah, that one. Okay. The bottom of the slide, it says there's a mirror, and this is one of my ideas, a mirror between art in the past and art now, and we'll use the example of the cinema. So keep this in your mind as we progress, the mirror between art in the past and cinema of the 20th century. Okay, next, please.